enhancing revenue management within the tool. So just a little background, Jack has been at HubSpot for about 8 years. And so he's kind of been living and breathing this. Last 3 years, he's been working on the Commerce Hub side. And so we knew he'd be a great presenter for us here today. He has such an infectious passion for HubSpot and for helping businesses. And I hear that he's very open as a true product person for feedback and ideas. So this would be a great time to kind of bend his ear for things that either clients are hoping to see, you're hoping to see as you're using HubSpot. So let's use the chat for that. And then, as I said, Adam is newer to HubSpot, but he has 15 years of tech and sales experience. And he was founding member at Cacheflow. So we're really excited for his unique perspective on how these products are going to be coming together. As I said earlier, let's try to give them some good virtual event energy, use the chat for reactions and things. They may address questions as we go, so feel free to just drop things in the chat. And if not, I'll kind of keep track of that and make sure that we get questions answered at the end of this. So I'll hand it over here. Thank you so much.
I'll take it first just because I'll do a little screen share if that's all right, Adam. But Sophie, of course, thank you for inviting us here and putting everything together. Really do appreciate that. And good morning, afternoon, maybe even evening to everyone here, I guess, depending on where you are in the world. Really appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you all for joining and echoing what Sophie did just mention. Absolutely, we would appreciate any and all feedback, thoughts, questions that you all have in the chat. I'll keep my eye on it throughout this session, so don't feel like you need to hold your tongue. We'll have a little Q&A at the end, but again, at any point, if you do have any thoughts, questions, feedback, we'd love to hear it. So drop it in the chat. I'll keep my eye on it. I have a sense that Adam will as well. So folks, I'm really excited for this, and I'm really excited that Adam was able to join. I'll just quickly introduce myself a little bit more on top of what Sophie mentioned, because Sophie, I think you summed it up pretty perfectly, frankly, but I've been on this commerce team now for about 3 years. And it's been a really, really interesting ride. We've done so much from a product development perspective. The tools have grown a tremendous amount. I get the sense a lot of you folks in this session likely already know this. If not, definitely check them out. I'm happy to help if you all do want some help adopting these tools. But we've made a ton of progress recently. And we also brought on the Cacheflow team just a couple of months ago. So this is a really big time for the commerce team here at HubSpot. I'm ridiculously excited for 2025 and what's to come next year. And folks, I will also say, this is still early for us. We're less than a month and a half into this acquisition closing. And so frankly, if you all do ask questions that we can't answer today, it's not a matter of us not wanting to answer it. Frankly, it's pretty much like us not really even knowing ourselves yet. So things are still coming together on our end. And the conversation today is really to level set around where we've been, what Cacheflow has been up to. We'll walk through these tools and chat a little bit about where we are going. So setting the stage on that front, that's what I've been up to here at the commerce team at HubSpot over the past few years. Adam, would love for you to do a quick introduction, maybe a little bit about your background as well, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you, Jack. And of course, Sophie, it's a pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me as well. Team, it's great to meet everybody. As Jack had mentioned, I joined the Cacheflow team around a year ago, but that's on the heels of about 15 years of revenue operations and sales efficiency, tooling, and technology experience. I actually got started in CPQ way back when guided selling was just the craze. And I've been on a mission ever since to effectively help sellers outperform against quota. And in order to do so, something that I've always been passionate about is really trying to figure out where we can create efficiencies so that sellers can create the buyer experience that the buyers really want to go and partner with. And so that effectively was something that when I had met Sarika, my then CEO, now running the CPQ product at HubSpot, that she also was passionate about. And so we effectively came to market with this idea, and we have been very successful, and we're very pleased to bring all of this DNA into the HubSpot ecosystem.
We're really excited to have you folks on board, of course. And again, lots more to come over the next weeks, months, quarters, and even years ahead. Now, folks, it does need that DNA, Chris. I completely agree, my friend. So before even getting into this, folks, let's just set this stage as to what the current status quo looks like for so many different businesses when it comes to their commerce process, when it comes to their revenue management more broadly. And then I want to chat with you all a little bit about how HubSpot is thinking about revenue management, both today and into the future. And then maybe we can jump into the Cacheflow product a little bit, just so that you all can see like what Adam and team have been up to over the past few years. They built an absolutely awesome product that over time will be HubSpotified. I don't know if that's a verb, but if it is, if it isn't, then maybe I just coined it. And then and then we'll hop into some stuff on the HubSpot commerce side as well. So we have a lot of new features that have come out recently and some stuff that is immediately on the horizon. So I want to give you all some insight into that as well. Adam, please chime in at absolutely any point here, because I'd love your take, especially as someone who's been around, playing at HubSpot before even joining the team. So folks, as I'm sure a lot of you all can resonate, a lot of companies and businesses are managing their entire go-to-market function on top of HubSpot, their marketing, their sales, their customer success motion. And when it comes to the deal management specifically, folks do love managing their sales process within HubSpot, both from a rep's perspective, but also from management leadership to be able to really understand how things are going. So people are generally managing their deals within HubSpot, but then they're often jumping out to a completely separate tool for their CPQ needs. We, of course, have a quoting tool, but people will often hit their water's edge once you need to get a little bit more sophisticated around things like rules and governance and making it a little bit more flexible to meet your business's needs. So folks are often getting that agreement, but then jumping to a complete different tool to ink that agreement, and then often going to another separate platform to actually invoice, to do that billing motion, and then using a completely separate platform to actually process those payments so that you can really recognize that revenue, and then a completely separate platform again to actually close those books for that accounting and reconciliation piece. So these are a lot of different tools to manage what shouldn't be too complicated of a process, folks. And when you're talking about multiple tools in a given tech stack, you're also generally talking about a number of different data sets as well. So if we take a step back and think about how HubSpot is thinking about revenue management more broadly, we want to be able to truly consolidate everything within HubSpot so that within that flywheel, you don't have to jump out for that last mile of the sales process, which I would argue could be the most important part, where you do not want to lose momentum. And instead, you do everything within HubSpot for that front office, for those customer-facing teams and reps, while still being able to integrate and move that data into that accounting and that reconciliation piece. Adam, I saw you nodding your head, and I know you've been around this space for quite some time. I'm curious your take as to how I personally and HubSpot over the past handful of months or years sees the status quo versus where we're looking forward. What's your take on all of this?
I mean, it lines up perfectly with candidly, my reasoning even for joining Cacheflow in the first place. I mean, it's certainly worth mentioning. I've spent my career working across sales teams and go-to-market, and as a sales leader or even somebody in a senior leadership position who's effectively trying to identify how even to forecast, right? All of these things that we're typically looking at today are inextricably linked in that, like, inefficiency really makes it hard for most of us who are trying to bring up an idea, a service, a product to market. All of these inefficiencies start to add up. And so I love the way that we're talking about this as a flywheel. At the end of the day, if these systems can effectively all be contained to the system that's also driving all of the tangential operating workflows, so the cross-functional partners can coexist in a way that you can create real efficiencies and closing fast and getting paid in a single entity, that fundamentally transforms how businesses effectively get aligned against their true North Star, in most cases, the revenue North Star. And so, yes, the pain statement is real, and it touches a bunch of different departments who often don't really want to talk, to one another. And what we find is that when you do bring everybody into a system that makes it easier to produce the data that's going to drive revenue, i.e. the quote, so that we can then use the data to manage the customer relationship, you really start to unlock and accelerate that revenue. So it's all a function of finding ways to create speed and visibility. And of course, for our finance brothers and sisters, all of the accuracy necessary to actually manage the business. And so when we do have to go into different systems, in today's age, this is an unnecessary step. That last mile pain is real. And of course, HubSpot couldn't be a better ecosystem to live in, because now HubSpot gets to become the proper revenue lifecycle management solution for the business. Comprehensive. That's the game.
Which is an exciting thing for me. And as someone who's been at this company for 8 years, just and seen this product grow so much, this is something that our customers have been asking us for so much time. So I'm really excited to continue to deliver on that. And I hope everyone here attending agrees with that sentiment. I'd also echo, Adam, your statement around consolidating everything in one place. It makes working cross-functionally a lot easier. And it's not just your revenue data underneath the HubSpot roof. It is literally all of your customer and your commerce data in one place, which is a big unlock. Adam, you also referenced towards the beginning of the session the buyer experience as well. That's something that can be easy to lose sight of when we're just thinking about our own systems through and through. In a world, though, where someone receives 15 different links from 5 different people in order to just close a deal, to become your customer, that is not a good buyer experience either. And so much of this is allowing for your buyer to have a really consistent and delightful journey with you as a business as well.
It's worth calling out, Jack. Something that's worth sharing with the team here is one of our favorite slides, early days Cacheflow, that we would get our investors excited about was, man, isn't it easy to go buy a Tesla? The experience that you're online and you're more or less configuring the system there, and then you're effectively making the purchase all from something that feels business to consumer. Isn't there an opportunity to kind of create this experience that the actual customers in a B2B environment or even in the services environment are really going to enjoy? Why? Because it's going to want them to come back, and they're going to want to do business with you more, because what you've really done is you've reduced the friction in just becoming a customer. And it feels a bit like a cliche, but when we took our building the Cacheflow application with that actually as the core tenet, and when we did so, what we ultimately found is that you want to make the customer the hero, you want to make the seller the hero, and you want to make your AR team the hero. And when you do that in a way that is light, it's simple, but yet comprehensive, you can still endeavor to tackle some complexity as your business scales. It ultimately helps free up all of that friction that we otherwise kind of have to dread looking forward to as we're scaling our business.
And buying a Tesla is not like a $5 transaction by any means.
Right.
I admittedly don't know how much they cost nowadays, but that's a 5-figure transaction. Why is it harder to buy whatever it is? So software,
That's
for
exactly
example,
right.
or services.
Or services, or et cetera. That's exactly right.
It does not have to be that hard. And so we're on a mission to make this a lot easier for you folks. Now, all of this is, I'm sure, and I hope, something that you are nodding along with. I'm sure some of you are sitting here, though, saying, okay, well, what does this actually look like in real time? So, folks, what I'd love to do, if it's okay, I would love to show you all a little bit about the Cacheflow product, because it is an absolutely awesome product. As I'm sure a lot of you all know, HubSpot is not the type of company that acquires a bunch of companies and then just bolts that software on top of our platform. We're very much of the crafted, not cobbled mindset here. And so, folks, while I do want to walk you all through the Cacheflow product, I do just want to caveat that the future of this is still relatively up in the air. Of course, we are going to be improving our tool in a big way and HubSpotifying a lot of this. But ultimately, I do just want to give you all a little bit of a sense as to where the Cacheflow team has been, why this was so compelling for the HubSpot team and our leadership. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't show you a little bit within HubSpot around what the commerce team has been up to throughout 2024 and really over the past 6-7 weeks, because we've had a lot of major releases that I would just be remiss if I didn't show off a little bit. So, folks, time back to the customer journey. I want to start actually with that Cacheflow walkthrough. Now, Adam, this is obviously your thing through and through. So please voice over this demo at any point. Keep me honest, interrupt me mid-sentence to go deeper. I really would love your take on all of this.
I tell you what, Jack, what would be, I'll make sure, so everybody on the call, obviously you all know, and of course, Jack has been a phenomenal steward in terms of helping everybody here see over time what HubSpot has been up to. So you kind of know where their gaps to be filled are. And so, Jack, we could perhaps start with some of those things that we talked about earlier. But conceptually, I want to make sure I do my job in helping you see that ultimately what we want to do is we want to drive in an environment the process of creating a proposal so that it is easy, but we're also able to govern the process, govern our approvals and govern any steps so that we can start to create compliances as we start to scale the go-to-market team. But then also tying the knot back to a billing event, a subscription event, right? Some sort of payment methodology. And then what you'll see in the application is that this actually expresses itself, it materializes very elegantly in when the seller is producing the quote, but then also when our buyer is actually perhaps making a checkout. But before we get to that part, which in my mind is that's the big value unlock, it is good to start with some of the capabilities that I think you all want to really make sure you walk away knowing about, because these are some of the capabilities that we're going to be bringing to HubSpot.
Adam, let me throw you a little bit of a curveball, if that's okay.
Sure,
Because
by all means.
the acronym CPQ, QTC, I feel like they're thrown around a huge amount. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people nod their head being like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But everyone is kind of on a different page around exactly what it means. So like, what is CPQ? What is QTC to you? I'll give my take, obviously, but let's just start.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it really almost is sort of the $60 million question in terms of how the market has approached even the acronyms, because you're going to get a lot of different answers vendor to vendor. So for me, I'll say it this way. Of course, we know quotes QTC, quote to cash. That really more or less might be the broader sort of spectrum of our revenue lifecycle journey, and then all of the components associated with getting a customer to execute a deal, maybe sign a quote. But then all of the more, let's call it downstream functions to actually collect payment. Whereas CPQ might represent the upstream portion of that, quote to cash, QTC. So CPQ, of course, refers to configure price quote. Now, configure price quote really was built for the transaction, right? It was built with a transaction in mind. It's a configurator, the system that we use to perhaps drive rules that might allow us to assemble a quote. But of course, what we wanted to do at Cacheflow was we decided that CPQ being built for a transaction is not really the way the modern world is going to want to work. In fact, we want to build a CPQ for the relationship. And by that, what we really mean is, in many cases, relationships change over time. So how does my CPQ, QTC, all one system, in this case, drive things like amendments and changes and renewals? And we can talk a little bit about that. Maybe that we can do a bigger demo later. But in that way, we are sort of challenging the idea of CPQ and QTC. We wanted to come with a product that really more spoke to ease of use and simplicity in closing a deal. So that's a long-winded way of saying sellers effectively will be producing proposals, and there are CPQ capabilities, that is grabbing product SKUs in the actual quote assembly tool. But that really produces the proposal quote, which effectively then delivers all of this now quote to cash data back into our CRM as well, of course, in our actual billing engine inside of Cacheflow. And then, of course, i.e. the billing engine, the Commerce Hub at HubSpot. So CPQ, QTC, all legacy terminology. For us, really, we think about this as like more like a revenue operating system, which includes quote building, it includes billing and subscription management. It includes being able to make amendments, changes, and renewals. So it's a lot, but end of the day, we want to simplify. We want to make it scalable and simple. And so hopefully we can kind of give you guys a taste of what that looks like.
Simplify has been a word that we love here at HubSpot and have always loved and will continue to. Folks, I'd be curious what you all think really CPQ or QTC encapsulates. If you do have thoughts, drop them into the chat, because this is one of those things that, again, I think everyone kind of nods their head on, but maybe doesn't completely have their arms around, or is talking about different things. I'll give my take really quickly. I think there are two levels of this. There's is this going to be really easy and nice to use as a seller as I'm going through that agreement process? Can I just close that deal without jumping through a ton of different hoops? There's also that other level, which is kind of the stuff underneath the hood. And frankly, this is where I think Cacheflow has shined on so many fronts, which is around that rules and the governance of what products can go together, what can be discounted, what are the approvals that need to happen, and things like that. And so there's that UI that someone uses on the day-to-day, but maybe even more importantly, it's that engine underneath the hood that powers everything that is super important for a lot of business leaders, for a lot of sales leaders specifically. And so let me quickly walk you all through, if that's okay, HubSpot's quoting tool. And I mean quickly, because it is my strong sense that a lot of you all are already quite familiar with our quoting tool. Then I want to come back into the Cacheflow product, walk you all through what they've been up to as well. Let me start with HubSpot though, folks, so that you all can get a sense as to what that HubSpot water's edge is right now. And then we can jump into that Cacheflow pool and maybe get a sense as to what things could look like into the future, again, without any promises, as we still are in those early days. So folks, of course, this is a deal within HubSpot. You can create quotes in a number of different ways. You can do so directly from the deal in that right sidebar. As I'm sure you all know, we're automatically going to be pulling the contact and the company associated with that deal. You do indeed click through a number of different times. Now, when it comes to the C in CPQ, this is really where everything is configured. Now, of course, you can do one time, you can do recurring payments, showing a few things off that are brand new. We now have weekly and every 2-week billing frequencies. That's both on the recurring invoices and the automatically charged, kind of like your Netflix account side of things. So those are 2 new features. You can do payment schedules, but what you'll notice is a given person, a given sales rep can add really whatever they want under any circumstances. They can come in, they can really add any discounts they want. And so this is very much a clean UI when it comes to building. However, underneath the hood, there are indeed some limitations. A few other limitations that I'll call out that I'm sure some of you all have run into before. We have a number of different default quote templates that you can use. You can also jump into our custom quote template editor and really build things however you'd like. There's so many people, though, who don't want to see a single line of code. Chris, I see you right here. I'm sure you love looking at that code and building those custom quote templates, but a lot of folks do want it to be a lot easier. And so when it comes to the customization, that's another piece of feedback that we've gotten over the years around our quotes tool. So again, our quotes tool is great. We have a ton of people using it and a ton of people seeing value out of it. However, as I've mentioned a few times, sometimes you just need to go a little bit deeper when it comes to the governance around everything. So let me jump into the Cacheflow product and walk you all through how they've been thinking about everything and then what that looks like from a rep perspective. And again, Adam, please keep me super honest throughout this as well, my friend. So folks, I'm going to jump right in. I'm not going to click through every single piece of this navigation. I'll call out some things, though, that I think you all would be interested in and that I think are especially powerful and easy to use as well, which is very, very important for us. We want to be fast and easy and, of course, unified as well. Let me quickly touch on approvals. HubSpot's quote functionality has had one level of approval for quite some time. However, we've gotten feedback around things like, well, I need different levels of approvals, or under this specific circumstance, I need this to happen. Clicking into the settings right here, I'll touch on product conditions just so that you can check this out. So maybe if the implementation fee discount exceeds, let's say, 33%, it really is that easy. Approval groups right here, set that up. Proposal conditions, if the total discount exceeds, I'll maybe jump into something renew. If auto renew is not enabled, again, you'll see, folks, that you can come right in and really easily set up everything from underneath the hood. Adam, I'm curious, as you would speak to your users and your prospects around the Cacheflow product, this is surely something that they found very, very powerful and useful. Correct me if I'm wrong, though.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I was actually hammering out a bunch of written stuff for you, Chris, but I think it actually gets back to kind of the heart of what Chris is after. At the end of the day, as our customers are really looking for ways to create, as Jack mentioned, governance. And so the approval workflow, the value of Cacheflow is that you have the ability to create a very deep product book using things like one-time and recurring product types, usage-based products in some examples. But then, of course, what you can do is you can start to assign a bunch of variables and dependencies, like, are these stair-stepped rules, are there graduated pricing types, are there tiers? And so now you can get very sort of creative in the data schema to support how you want to configure the actual product and maybe go to market with it. And then you can layer on top those approvals. And so once you start to do that, now you're bringing in perhaps legal consideration, net payment term consideration. So in that way, Chris, it more is on the configuration of deal quote side versus heavy rules and dependencies and declarative constraints to assemble, heavier, bigger ticket sort of manufacturing related items like tractors and servers and blade servers, etc. But anyway, the net here, of course, is that what we wanted to do was make it a low code, no code experience to create all of the approval rules necessary so that we can create rules engines for serial approvals and groups-based approvals, so that as you're taking your product to market and starting to put your sellers in a team, in a pod, and going out into market, they're of course not going rogue on you, running Wild West. We're actually able to produce some controls and some dependencies around their process, but in a way that doesn't prevent them from getting the deal done quickly. That's really the key.
And HubSpot is all about helping businesses scale. And ultimately, as businesses do scale, you can't have everyone go rogue. And there's a lot to be said for autonomy and decision making, on a smaller level. But sometimes you really do need to lock things in. And Aaron, just given a quick read of what you wrote, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And you're spot on when it comes to good for like enterprise and larger orgs. Adam, who are the customers that you all saw seeing the most success with the Cacheflow product, out of curiosity?
Yeah, it runs the gamut. Software companies really take a liking to Cacheflow because it makes it easy for them to kind of get ahead of all of the friction associated with getting my go-to-market engine off the ground, because you can effectively bring in a tool like Cacheflow and maybe defer a deal desk hire. So there are some material returns in terms of making an investment in a technology like Cacheflow, rather than sort of instituting a bunch of process and then sort of having to figure out how to deploy that in a real world environment with a real go-to-market sales team. But we have a ton of services customers as well. And so there are capabilities like milestone billing that might enable customers to sign somebody up, grab that credit card at the time of checkout, right? That's another capability on the buyer side. And then of course, now your finance team can actually build out the schedule and build all of the predictability and how you actually want to make this, how you want the relationship between how the buyer is paying and of course how you want to set up that billing schedule, etc. Aaron, I think your point is spot on. As companies get larger and perhaps maybe you're introducing new geos and territories, price books become important because now you want to apply different currencies to different SKU types. And so for us at the product level, we can assign different currencies, and so you can change the rules and the pricing architecture based on geos or based on other affiliations, similar price books. So spot on call out there. And these are, of course, all considerations that our customers want us to consider as they scale. And so what you'll see, the nice thing about Cacheflow is I have customers that come on board. They themselves have sort of sold off 2 businesses and they're just 1 or 2 people and they're starting a new venture. They buy us because they want to get ahead of what's coming down the pike, which is creating that governance and rule. And then I have customers of 400, 500, 600 employees, 50, 60 sellers, and they need proper, governance, and they want to have all of those more sophisticated workflows and approvals engines all built out in the back end. But in service of enabling the seller can effectively get a customer on a call, fire up a template, and actually produce a proposal quote in ad hoc on the fly. And so in that use case, when speed is really the driving sort of the principal component, customers also choose us. They love Cacheflow as well. So we cover a lot of different bases. But I think the net headline is that we find we service the HubSpot customer base really, really well. We're an excellent fit here. This is a great home for us.
Speed is huge too. I've never met a seller that wants to spend their time and their mental energy thinking about straddling all of these different systems and working with the finance team. Once you get that agreement, you want that deal to finally close. And again, provide that amazing buyer experience as well. Once someone says, yes, I want to be your customer, let them be your customer and don't put a bunch of barriers up. And so you're putting your finger on a lot of things, Adam, that we've been thinking and talking a lot about for quite some time. You also kind of alluded to billing a few times as well. Cacheflow is obviously a fantastic CPQ product. I've also gotten into that billing world a little bit. And so taking me down the road that I was going to go down anyway, as I'm sure a lot of you folks know, HubSpot, of course, is a billing platform. We do have subscription functionality. We, of course, have subscription management as well. It's something we heard a lot about for quite some time. We delivered that last year. We've delivered even more on that front over the past couple of quarters as well. However, as things stand today, it's more one-off. So if you wanted to, for example, have a 5% price increase after a given year, you'd have to manually do that for each individual contract, for each individual subscription within HubSpot. The Cacheflow folks figured this out, and again, a really easy and clean way. I'll be honest, Adam, the first time that I really played around this product, the only word that was coming to mind left and right was just clean. It's a really clean and easy to use and easy to set up product, both from that management, that leadership level and the things that they care about, but also that rep level as well. Let me just quickly show you all the payment terms. Nothing, not rocket science here by any means. I want to pivot to the actual sellers and the proposal creation process. Adam, anything else that you would call out on this front, though, sir? Because I want to make sure that I'm giving this product the love that it deserves.
I think it's worth calling out for the team here that's watching this. What we wanted to make sure you all felt you walked away with a good handle on was the capabilities that are going to allow customers, as they think through scale, more of the, let's call it, complexities in terms of how they want to produce those governance rules and guidelines. Now, in terms of the user experience, yes, mate, we can talk a little bit about that, because that really is where the product shines. That said, it's just it's a fun anecdote. I became a sales leader years ago, and you can ask any of the sellers that ever worked for me. There was always these moments whenever customers are telling us that they're actually asking for quotes, and I would always tell every single time my seller, I would say, listen, my approvals, workflows, or my thresholds. I became a sales leader, so I never had to go back to CPQ again. And it was a genuine sentiment. At the end of the day, using the product has to be easy. And that is why I came to help Sarika and team get this product really off the ground, because what we've really done is we've actually created a system that actually gives value and time back to the seller. Because what they want to do is they want to sort of scenario, hey, what are my potential quotes going to end up yielding me in terms of my quota relief or maybe my commissions? So in a result, the tool needs to be embracing and welcoming. And so we can show that a little bit if you want to do that, Jack. But I think the net headline is that we're effectively trying to prevent a seller from jumping through all of the steps in assembling a quote. And that assembly process should actually just take place on a single screen. And maybe even start from a template based on the potential use case that you're in. If you're in a mid-market environment or an enterprise environment, these might be two different starting points. They might be two different templates. And so we can, whether or not we have that teed up, I think I'll just share that conceptually, these are some of the concepts that we wanted to make sure we brought into the product, so it makes it easier to jumpstart the quote proposal process. There you go.
We don't have it teed up, but let's go for it. Why not? It's an easy to use product.
Perfect.
Yeah, let's go for it. We're not afraid of a live demo.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Jack had mentioned also, please, everybody, feel free to reach out to me directly too. Totally happy to take specific use cases or questions as well. But the net headline here is that when we're thinking about building a quote, first thing that's worth mentioning is as a seller, maybe Jack, if you just scroll up to the tippy top just for a moment for me, just to kind of give everybody orientation in the platform. So when a seller is doing their thing in Cacheflow, we were looking at more of the back end a moment ago. Usually a seller's experience is going to be just this. That is, they're in HubSpot, they're maybe at a deal, and they're going to simply click on a card that's actually in the deal level. They're just going to fire up a quote. They're going to click that, and it's going to bring them to a window like this. And what you're seeing there at the top of the screen, in fact, if we hit the done button, we have, okay, so if you go edit in draft mode, we may need to tie this back, but there's a section at the tippy top that's actually typically north of the term that's actually going to inherit all of the deal level and company level details. And so you're going to see that we're going to inherit, here we go, supplier, ship to. So in this case, because it's not tied to a record, there's no data there. But the net point here is that it's a bidirectional sync. So as a result, the seller doesn't have to think about it. They're just going to click, I want to create a quote. We're going to ingest all of that data, and we're going to pre-populate the actual quote with all of the customer's buyer information that we've already captured. Now, in the event that we don't have that information, we can ship this to the buyer, and the buyer also has the ability to interact with a digital experience where they can input some of those details, if that's something that we want to give the buyer an opportunity to do. But the key, I think, for everybody on this call is to understand what we wanted to prevent was sellers from having to jump through a bunch of, I'm going to call them guided selling hoops. And so, point of fact, when I'm a seller and I'm using the Cacheflow quoting tool, the screen, if you go ahead and close this, all I'm worried about is this screen, and I can simply change my terms and conditions, adjust my currencies, identify the term, right, add my products, and then you can see the knot is we're also producing for the seller a sense of what the billing schedule could look like depending on the product arrangement. And so in a single pass, the seller is not only able to produce a quote, or at least grab the products, but we're also getting some sense and a feedback of maybe how my discounts are going to be affecting the payment schedule for the customer, if it's a lump sum. So we have a lot of ways to start to gather a sense of how the customer is going to see this quote. And then, of course, when the customer gets the actual digital quote themselves, they're going to get the other side of the coin, which is going to be a branded experience, right? And then, of course, they can even play around with different billing terms if we want to make those available. It's a configurable option there. You can see there at the bottom of the screen, at the top here, payments, payment terms. Cooper's identified that this customer has the ability to maybe pay monthly or annual. And what's really cool about this, I just want to share this, Jack, just to share this. Yeah, so here so the seller can identify what kind of payment options they want to make available. Maybe if they're on an annual, they don't get access to a credit card payment. Maybe if they're on monthly, maybe they can only choose credit card. So we have some configurations that we can set up here. But what's really nice is we also have the ability to tie discounts to one of the two payment options. And so as a seller, what I might do, and this is very common, is I'll start with my annual. I'll give my customer some agreed upon discount. But then, of course, their team comes back to me and says, hey, I want a monthly deal. And I say, well, I can't do monthly, but I'll tell you what, I like you. We're friends. Let's do quarterly, semi-annual, whatever it might be. But what's nice is my discounting will stick to my annual, right? But maybe they lose it on the alternative, on the other option in terms of the payment, the invoice term. And as a result, now I can actually drive them towards the annual outcome because I've incentivized them to do so. So we've started to give the seller some levers and starting to create some levers to actually drive the behavior of maybe trying to capture annual upfronts, but without necessarily preventing the buyer from actually having the option. So we can talk a little bit more about that, but these are some of the sort of the nuances that we find for our customers. They absolutely love it because it doesn't complete, and we can build this in a way where there are approvals tied to this, but it doesn't necessarily slow down the whole machine. The seller can go produce all of this stuff, hit the approval workflow, and then make some subtle tweaks or changes in the back end without having to kind of reinvent the approval wheel, as it were. So there's a lot of ways that we can deploy this in different environments that, again, are really in service of helping the seller close fast. And I'm reading some of your notes here. Maybe, Jack, I'll let you sort of pick up. I'll read through here.
Yeah, I can pick up on some of these. And Aaron, you'll hear me say the words API. I don't know if that's a word, acronym, API, a handful of times in the 21 minutes or so to come. I'll call out a couple of other things, and I don't know if this is just me focusing weirdly on things that I think are cool, but I appreciate how easy and understandable this product is. Like, you can see things just reflect in real time. If I give 6 free months, and boom, you'll see it move automatically as you're moving through. Again, I won't just completely read from this.
Yeah, this is great.
I don't think that's useful. But if you just come right in, you'll see it is extraordinarily simple. Exactly, Aaron, you're spot on. It's visually very intuitive. People don't need to think too much. There's obviously that DocuSign connection as well, because people are signing this. And then again, folks, I'll just quickly show you this preview as opposed to the full-on distribution of everything. I flashed this a little bit earlier, but it is a very clean, easy to use, easy to understand product that, again, does allow for your reps to build things easily and close deals and maybe give some options, but not do the whole, let's give them a 90% discount just so that we can close. You can absolutely set things up with those approval levels. You can, create those price books appropriately as well. So
it's worth calling out, and I love the conversation happening in the chat room. So a couple of things I want to make sure I leave you guys with. Aaron, yes, the time-based events that actually can potentially impact payments in a set of scheduled events is something that actually we have in a version that we're not showing on the screen. That's a deeper capability, but there are certainly situations where some customers are trying to figure out ways where they can kind of schedule and plan on payments. It depends on, of course, what the company is selling, but time-based events was something that we also offer, but it's not here in this demo. Chris, your comment here in terms of visibility and transparency, at the end of the day, that actually was really what enabled us to be really successful in a very short span of time. When the customer feels like the business is being transparent, there's really nothing else that, like, it's what's the classic way that we used to have to deal with buying the car, right? Let me go talk to my manager. That's an old adage. In the cash flow environment, now a seller can produce all of the potential outcomes and even some optionality, so that the customer can effectively upfront say, look, I get it, you're giving me a good, better, best. And then the seller can produce the good, better, best, get it in front of the customer. And then there's the back and, you reduce the back and forth, because now really the customer more or less understands what those options are potentially going to, produce and what they're on the hook for. And so that really is the key, is really to get to a point of better visibility and transparency. And because all of this is digital, when the customer is engaging with the quote, now my seller and my head of sales is also able to see that these quotes are being engaged with. And so we can also start to produce behavior, so that when my quotes are starting, it's the last 2 weeks of the quarter, I'm the head of sales, I need to figure out where my needle movers are, right? You can come to a screen like this one. And in fact, if you go up to status for me real fast, Jack, and just click on maybe shared awaiting signature, and you hit apply there. So now I'm a head of sales. Okay, so we don't have any examples here, but you will see the status where the seller has sent the proposal and the buyer is engaging with them. Every time the buyer engages with it or opens it up on their in their browser, we're going to actually get a signal back that says that it's being looked at. And so something that, of course, we're familiar with maybe with DocuSign, but that concept now helps us. And when it lives in the quoting tool, now the CRO and the seller are directly aligned on, hey, this one's hot, this one's not getting any action. How do we start creating nudging events, better sales behavior in a way where we can actually start to control the outcome of what we'd like to call as the last mile of revenue? That really is the big transformation that a lot of our senior leadership really enjoys out of Cacheflow, because now they have a level of visibility that they can start to get that engagement signal and start to actually produce new behaviors around it before, otherwise they couldn't, because again, maybe it was a PDF or maybe it was in a format that wasn't necessarily connected back to my CRM. And that's another big thing that, of course, HubSpot is known for. So again, these are part and parcel with one another.
And May, you asked a great question. I'll pick it up because Adam literally just mentioned something to this effect. Do these metrics sync to HubSpot?
Yeah.
Cacheflow does have an integration with us. However, folks, while I can't necessarily promise exactly how things are going to play out or exactly when they're going to play out, because again, this is still the very early days for us and things take time. Ultimately, though, I can promise this. We are not going to be swapping this logo out and putting some HubSpot orange on this by any means. Everything within HubSpot is going to be crafted on top of our platform. And so when it comes to do these metrics sync to HubSpot, Adam would obviously defer to you regarding like exactly how they sync. I know that they do, but when it comes to the long term, do they sync to HubSpot? May, I'll be honest, I would push back on the premise of the question a little bit, because it's just going to be within HubSpot through and through. There's no syncing. It is literally just a part of the skeleton that is HubSpot. And so that's what I'm really excited about, is to take everything that these folks have learned, everything that they've done, and really bring this into our platform so that we have a truly unified experience from a merchant's perspective. So for our HubSpot users, but also for your customers as well, for your buyers. So that's what I'm really, really fired up about. And again, can't promise many things. I can absolutely promise, though, we're not just going to put some orange colors on this on the Cacheflow product by any means. We're going to craft this, not cobble it together.
It's a really good call out, and it's important, I think, for the team to know. So we have a lot of complex use cases, and the nice thing is that oftentimes I think people sort of fear complexity. In fact, we don't even really like to use complexity as a concept. In fact, we want to make sure that customers understand that it's simple, it's easy, but it's comprehensive. That said, the data set is important too. So I have customers who are pulling 25, 26, 30 bits of data out of our system, and they're bringing it all back into the HubSpot environment, quote line item, right? Deal details, ARR, MRR, TCV. There's a ton, because we produce all of this revenue data. We can supply HubSpot with a deep set of, again, revenue data, which then, of course, can now get pushed across to your customer business for renewal alerts and understanding how to potentially change, manage, or amend, renew, etc. So yes, with respect to the application as it exists, it's got a really, really deep ecosystem integration with HubSpot. But as Jack is alluding to, our mission is to create a world where when you're in HubSpot, you effectively have all of the delight that the Cacheflow application is bringing the end users, but in a way that really ultimately helps tie your sales process to your actual revenue outcome downstream, so that finance is speaking the same language. That's really the key here. You know, we used to joke, and we still do a little bit, that 50% of finance's time is spent figuring out how to manage 5% of the contracts that your sellers are closing. And while I can't validate those statistics, it certainly feels right, May, right? That totally. What we brought on a member of our product team, and that was a saying he said to me, and I feel like it's absolute. It always resonates. How much time does finance have to go figure out quarterback and jockey when our 5% seller, 5% of those deals, our sellers are just getting through the door because we got to hit a number. And so it's key to have that data alignment. And of course, that means we have to fill a hungry CRM.
I'm gonna steal that stat from you because that's a good one. I'll throw out my favorite stat here, Adam, and maybe put you on the spot a little bit. So Intuit, a couple of years ago, obviously a huge player in the finance accounting space. Intuit did a study for just the UK alone. Guess how many hours a year are wasted in the UK following up on overdue invoices? Have I told you this number yet?
I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be something that would make most of us fall out of our seat for sure.
56.4 million hours. So like, I don't even know how many days or years or decades, maybe even centuries that is, but way too much time. And when it comes to HubSpot and how everything is structured from a data perspective, if you have the data underneath our roof, you're going to be able to automate around it. You're going to be able to report on it. So I know it goes without saying for most of you all who's in this session today, but if you have all of this revenue data and you can really trust it within our system, because everything is within our system, that's when you're really able to give the marketers the credit that they deserve, because you're able to see those dollar signs on those marketing assets. So that will allow for you all to really understand the opportunities for your business, where things are going well and where there's room for improvement. When it comes to automation, again, without getting my crystal ball out too much, is there a world where if we can touch the data around the number of views for a proposal, that we can then automate communications around viewing those proposals, but not actually signing, not actually paying on them? Probably, I'd bet $50 right now that we'd be able to do that. And so a lot more to come on this, but there's a lot more to be said than just seeing the data in one place. You can do stuff. And Chris, yeah, who knows where AI is going to be going in the future? But ultimately, I do know that if you have a ton of different data sets that aren't on the same page, you're probably not going to be taking full advantage of whatever computing power is on the horizon. Adam, anything you'd add on that? I see you kind of chomping at the bit a little bit.
No, I love it. And I think there's a lot of carrots that we hope to dangle here. And Chris, I mean, speaking of AI, there's a lot that we are excited to talk about in terms of how AI plays in this world. I can tell you this, and without going into detail, because I think we want to make sure we're hardening some of these concepts, but I will say that as somebody who's been in a sales seat and a sales leadership seat and a head of revenue position and reporting to a board over these last 15 years, I have it in my head that sellers want to be prepared when they get on calls. They want to effectively execute a call well, and they want to leave that call prepped by a machine that effectively tells them what their gaps are, what their blind spots were, and what they did well. The quote is no exception. It stands to reason that there's a world where the system is not only giving me some feedback on how well my meeting went, but if my customer started asking me about pricing, it might make sense that the machine is perhaps producing a pro forma quote for me as well. That way my CRM I'm not having to sort of jockey the traditional process of like anchoring all my deals on some abstract amount figure that then changes as we get into the later stages of the deal. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to take what already is an intuitive and simple and candidly delightful tool, but also really be consistent in the mission of helping sellers genuinely keep their attention on the customer and let the machine offload all of the synthesis work and the administrative stuff. And Cacheflow is right inside of that. And of course, now my head of revenue and my CEO or whomever it is that's reporting to the board is going to be in a position to have a more precise understanding of what my actual revenue capacity is going to be, as opposed to those numbers all changing the very last minute the deal is ready to close. And so there's a lot of potential infrastructure change that's going to be all net benefit when we start to get the product in a place where HubSpot data is feeding the machine is, the revenue lifecycle management technology, Cacheflow is feeding the CRM, and now the sellers are effectively just doing their job well, but because everything is being captured behind the scenes, a lot of these systems are offloading all the tactical, practical work that sellers, of course, we all hate to do.
Sellers want to build relationships and sell, not manage a bunch of different systems and become, experts in all of those systems by any means. So
more to come on this. This is a fun topic. More to come on this for sure, Aaron. I'd be happy. And by the way, I shared my email. Happy to absolutely do an end-to-end for anybody who's interested.
I can tell we have some folks who are fired up. I'm fired up too. And I mentioned this to Sophie when we joined. I stand by the initial comment. I think that this is one of the cooler hugs I've ever been a part of, and maybe one of the coolest of 2024, because there's a lot that's about to happen. There's also a lot that has happened. So folks, if it's okay, I'd love to just spend a couple seconds, because I do want to allow a little bit of time for a broader Q&A. Again, keep the chat coming, because I think it's fun. I hope you all find it useful, but keep the questions and the thoughts and the feedback coming. Folks, let me touch a little bit around billing. This is an area where the team has focused quite a bit of our energy throughout 2024. That's on a number of different fronts. That is being able to do your classic one-time and your recurring payments, your payment schedules, your invoicing. I'll quickly show you all some things, though, that are on the newer side, instead of walking through stuff that I'm pretty confident a lot of you all have probably already used yourself. So when it comes to subscriptions, for so long, you had to actually collect payment from your buyer before a subscription record, which of course represents a recurring payment, was created. Now what you have the ability to do is automatically create and distribute those invoices. So recurring invoices is the common term, at the cadence and for the amount that you set. That also allows for you to create subscriptions independent of processing that first payment. So this is something that we received quite a bit of feedback around. It's something that we're very excited to deliver. I think earlier in the summer, actually. This is a couple of months old now. A couple of other things that I think are going to be a little bit more interesting to you folks. Tax calculation. Everyone obviously loves taxes. I sure do. Folks, automatic tax calculation is something that we actually have in a public beta right now in Canada. US is coming just in the next couple of weeks. So if you are in the US and you want taxes automatically calculated within the platform, stay tuned. Feel free to reach out directly. It's coming very, very soon. And then Aaron, I promised I'd use the acronym API. You picked up on this a little bit earlier. We do indeed have read APIs for our commerce objects. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't call out. Subscription represent recurring payments. Payments represents the actual transaction, and invoices. These are both a record of payment and a payable artifact as well. You'll see that these are CRM objects through and through, which means things like automation, reporting, and segmentation as well. It also means APIs for CRM objects. We are slowly and carefully opening up our invoice write API right now. So if anyone here hears this and is like, "Ooh, I want that today," reach out to me, Jack Coopersmith at HubSpot.com. I'll drop it right now. We'll get you access to that. When it comes to subscriptions and payments, much more to come in the next couple of months on this front, folks. It's a really big deal. I get the sense that a lot of you all are going to have some fun with that. The last thing that I'll mention is the accounting integration piece, because I do want to take us home when it comes to the entire revenue management process. QuickBooks, we launched that new integration that is a bi-directional invoice sync. Frankly, folks, it's incredibly simple. It's really hard to build, though. Ultimately, if you have invoice 123 within HubSpot, that will create invoice 123 within QuickBooks. If it's marked as paid in HubSpot, it'll be marked as paid in QuickBooks. It's a simple bi-directional sync that you, of course, have a lot of different rules that you can bake in, and filters, and which system takes precedent and all of that good stuff as well. Zero is coming up for us next, folks. So this is something that we're actually approaching an alpha for right now, and we have a lot more to come on this front. And of course, as we continue to open up and as we continue to focus on things like our data infrastructure and our reporting from a unified data perspective, you can expect a lot more on this. May, I'm not sure if it was you who mentioned this, but you all mentioned something around recurring revenue and being able to forecast more accurately. I promise that's something that the team is thinking a lot more about. And if you all have very strong opinions around this, again, we would love to connect. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect you with some other folks on the product side of things who are thinking quite a bit about this nowadays. So folks, that's all I had for you all on this core content here. I know we're coming up on time. I do just want to open up a little bit more, though, for any questions that you folks do have, any thoughts that you have. Ultimately, though, more than anything, I hope you folks are excited. Sophie, are you excited?
I am excited. Yes, this is great. Always love the behind the scenes look. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you for having us. We really do appreciate it. And folks, thank you all for taking some time out of your day to join as well. I know everyone is busy and has a lot going on, especially during the holiday season. So thank you all for taking some time out of your day to hang out with us. Again, we dropped our emails, and when we say we're happy to help, like, we really do mean it. So if you do have thoughts, questions, feedback, feel free to connect with us. And let's make revenue management in HubSpot incredibly easy, fast, and unified.
I love it. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much for everybody engaging in the chat and bringing great conversation. You guys are obviously pros. We were able to thread that through. So thanks for giving us an hour of your time. It was fantastic.
Got one of my product members here now who's going to continue to build a world-class product for everybody here. So thank you so much for hosting this, Sophie. It's good to see everybody. Good to meet everybody. And
are you in the HubSpot office, Adam?
I am. I'm in San Francisco.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. Love to hear it. Well, thanks, folks. Have a great holiday season ahead.
Thank you so much. Have a great Wednesday.